This morning on BRN, improving your memory and your heart health. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is registered dietitian Alexis Supan from the Cleveland Clinic. Alexis, so great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you, and I always love talking health. I wanted to ask you, though, maybe at the 50,000 foot view, a lot of times we talk about wellness, we talk about aging, but are there ways nutritionally to improve our memory and our overall health and our heart health?
Oh, definitely. There's actually a lot of changes we could make, and making some big changes not only can it improve your memory and cognition, day to day. There's great evidence out there that really changing dietary habits can lower your risk for things like Alzheimer's disease quite significantly.
Yeah, and I think, just looking at some of the research, I mean, there are certain foods maybe that are really rich in antioxidants. These seem to be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but they seem to be almost a silver bullet to taking care of some of these really chronic diseases. Example would be blueberries. These look like to be the snack of choice.
Definitely. Yeah, blueberries are probably one of the most potent foods available to most people that can really help with brain health and cognition. The reason behind it is because they are extremely high in anthocyanins. Those are a flavonoid, it's an antioxidant, which helps protect our brain. The way that happens is that they can actually penetrate the blood-brain barrier, and they can help prevent free radicals, which is something we all deal with, something we're all exposed to just from poor diet or smoking or pollution, just general kind of environmental toxins. And they can go in there and prevent those free radicals from doing damage to our brain.
And in terms of sourcing blueberries, I would imagine you can get blueberries at your local produce stand. You can go to your local grocery store and you can find them and buy them and consume them on a daily basis. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, they're very widely available. There's a few other berries out there that also provide the same benefits or even in greater amounts, but they are berries that we come across few and far between. Whereas blueberries, even if you're going to like a really large warehouse or a large big box type store, you could get a huge bag of frozen blueberries.
So it's okay then. I was going to ask you, that was a follow question I was going to ask. In terms of, you don't always have to get the fresh blueberries. You can actually buy frozen blueberries in the frozen food section. That's actually what I buy.
Yeah, exactly. Any blueberries you get, fresh or frozen, you're going to get that benefit. There might be a slight difference if you're getting something like wild blueberries versus just kind of standard blueberries. Wild blueberries are actually significantly higher in those flavonoids in their content for the anthocyanins, but those aren't always available to us. And regular blueberries are more than fine. And fresh or frozen, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and how do you prepare? Do you have to prepare the blueberries in a certain way? Can you eat them raw? I mean, I think you want to clean them probably when you get them from the store. That would probably be number one. But do you have to prepare them in a certain way? For example, can I bake a blueberry pie and still get the same benefits and support my sweet tooth?
Yeah, so you would get the benefits, but you're also doing certain things that, of course, would not be the best for brain health. But in terms of like ways to consume them, really the possibilities are endless. You can keep them frozen. I have a lot of people who like to use them as a cold snack in the wintertime, and they'll roll them in Greek yogurt and freeze them as individual like frozen balls. And it's this nice, cool, creamy, sweet treat that's a nice substitute for ice cream. And those are great. You could have them fresh. You could throw them in a smoothie and have them that way. All of that's fine. You'll still get those benefits.
Would you mind if we take a step back? And I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of the nutrition, being a nutritionist, your role. How has that changed with the emergence of all this and your organization, the Cleveland Clinic? You do a lot of research as well as practice a lot of medicine. But how has the evolution of becoming a nutritionist changed over the past decade?
Yeah, so the big change is so now to become so technically if we're talking about in the US, technically the word dietitian is the protected term.
Okay.
So nutritionist, there's not much regulation. For dietitian, that is something that's been regulated. And recently there's been changes where now anyone who wants to become a dietitian has to get a master's degree. When I became one 15 years ago, it was the process of getting a bachelor's in dietetics and then doing a 1 year clinical internship. So they've just changed it a little bit. And then it's a very interesting field. People don't really think about this much, but nutrition sciences is it's a little baby. When we look at all the sciences, what we've learned about nutrition has really been kind of mostly from the last 100 years or so. You know, you go back much longer, there's not a ton of information. So it's a very new field.
And I apologize. I meant dietitian as opposed to nutritionist. No, no harm, no foul there. You know, I'm just a layperson, so I don't really know. Yeah, I don't know much. I need people like yourself to help educate me. Um, just let me, if in the remaining time we have, if we could maybe shift a little bit to your diet and aging. I know we talked about memory and cognition. We talked a little bit about inflammation. Are there things that we need to really think hard about as we age? You hit your 40s, your 50s. Obviously, weight gain, I can attest to that, is an issue. But do we need to eat and source our foods differently than we did in our 20s and 30s?
Probably, unless you just happen to be a very healthy, a very health conscious eater in your 20s and 30s. Yes, you want to start paying more attention to it, and kind of regardless for age, even if you're in your 60s or 70s and thinking, you know, most of what's done is done. Never too late to make some changes and see the benefit. In general, what you want to be doing is trying to decrease those processed and ultra processed foods in the diet. The more you can go to the kind of Mediterranean style of eating, where you're having lots of fruits and vegetables, a big variety in there, and more whole grains and lean proteins like fish or chicken, the better off you'll be. We really want to cut out those processed meats and those ultra processed snacks.
And let me, as a follow up to that, let me ask you about the importance of water. We're what, two-thirds water, three-quarters water? Water
Yeah.
is water more important as you age than when you were 20 or 30 something, or is it kind of about the same? You need water regardless.
It's a bit more important. And part of the reason I say that is because as people age, they tend to be a little less good about staying hydrated. It wasn't too long ago, I actually saw a study that looked at our cognition and our brain function at different levels of dehydration. And it does not take much dehydration to show a significant decline in cognition. So it is something that's very important as far as how our brain is functioning. And I know most people start to drink a little bit less as they're older just for bladder issues. You know, running to the bathroom all the time is much less appealing.
Yeah, it certainly is not, especially when you're doing an interview. You don't want to have to jump
Yeah.
off, head to the bathroom. Last question, I want to ask you about caffeine and more importantly, coffee. A lot of us, myself included, have several cups of coffee or a cup of coffee in the morning. What's the latest thinking on caffeine and aging? Outside of the sugar and the sweeteners, but the caffeine in the coffee itself.
Yeah. So, and even those two things are kind of very different in and of themselves. So, the research on caffeine, and I think the most important thing to mention is this is one of those, you know, when I say nutrition is one of the newer sciences, we're getting a lot of mixed messaging on caffeine. In general, I'm seeing things trend towards, you know, it's better to not have the caffeine than to have any. Although, you know, we also know caffeine can give you that boost at those times when it's necessary, assuming you need it. Coffee by itself, if we were just to isolate talking about that versus other caffeine sources, coffee is really an excellent source of antioxidants. And it's actually one of the highest antioxidant sources for most Americans, partially because our diets might not be great in other areas.
Mhm.
But it really can be a great source. So if you kind of want to hedge your bets, your best bet really would be keeping coffee in the diet, but probably switching to a decaf.
Decaf versus caffeinated. Oh, very interesting. Well, Alexis, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you and the Cleveland Clinic back on the program again very soon.
Great. Thanks for having me.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Polls, for all the news in one place. Details, of course, at our website. And your subscription helps support all this great BRN content. And we're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.